This is our very first Tech Talk in a year now in West Palm Beach. So welcome and thank you all for coming. Yes, we're excited about that. So, I mean, obviously talking to a few of you already tonight, I think people are kind of, ready to get back in person. So thank you again for being some of the first to do that, because I'm sure by the fall, everybody's going to want to be out. So tonight we have special guest Lou from Moving Minds. And I do want to, before we get started, introducing just our sponsors. Our talk tonight is just to thank the venue. Jordan, if you want to wave your hand over there just to say hello and thank you again from her. Of course, we are so gracious that they were able to give us the space tonight. And of course, just wanted to give a shout out to Sam as well back there. I know you're going to come up and say a few words also, right? For us? Cool. Okay, cool. So are you doing the presentation or how are we doing that on the slide?
We could just do it speaking and then
he's
going to share a screen.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. All right, so we're going to change it up a little bit. So for anybody that's watching, this is a little bit different. I'm just going to talk. Normally I've got a slide at this point. But so a little bit about Tech Hub South Florida. So our organization, we are a 501c6 nonprofit. We do have about 200 and maybe 15, 20 corporate members currently from Miami-Dade through Palm Beach County, a few that are also trickled into Miami County and, into Martin County. And then we also have different programs and events and things that we do throughout the year like this. We also have hackathons, we have our tech talks, we have community coffees, which are panel discussions every other Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. We have podcasts also alternating with our panel discussions. And then we have educational workshops on Fridays. So in an average week, I'm sorry, I feel like I can't see you. In an average week, we've got about 3 to 5 events. And then of course we have different events going on throughout the year as well. So please, if you guys haven't gotten involved before or really haven't gotten a chance to come to our events or attend any of them, please take a look at our website, which is techhubsouthflorida.org. And if you go to the calendar, we have a community calendar, which you can separate into all the meetup groups, all the user groups, plus all of our events and more there. Also is a little bit for anybody that may be looking for a job opportunity in the audience or on Zoom. At our website, again, techhubsouthflorida.org. If you go there, there's a tab that says talent. And then under that tab, you'll see our job board. And there's also a resume distributor. So if you're looking through the job board, and there's a ton of great, companies, like we have small startups all the way through the large enterprise like Office Depot, FPL, Carrier, Royal Caribbean, a lot of those folks involved as well. But if for some reason you're looking through that and you don't see the perfect job for you, but you still want to get your resume out, the resume distributor, you literally just create a little profile, upload your resume, and then that automatically goes to all of our corporate members and any companies that have signed up to receive that service. So it's a great way to get your information out there. And I'm going to go at this point, and I'm going to hand it over to, you're right in front of me, Carrie, to our sponsor. So Carrie actually sponsors all of our tech talks. So I'm going to give him a moment. Words.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. So first off, to Nikki and Monica, these young ladies do a phenomenal job. I got to remember my pronouns. So my name is Carrie Stamp. I'm the CEO of Carrie Stamp & Company. We are a multi-generational financial advisory firm. We have offices here in Florida, in Stamford, Connecticut, and in Chicago, and also in there's an office in South America. We work with families that want to enhance and grow their wealth. Families at all levels of the spectrum. So you don't have to have multi-millions to work with one of our financial advisors. The firm was voted Best of Palm Beach by the Palm Beach Post, and we were also recognized by Forbes magazine as the best in state for wealth management. So if you would like to grow, enhance your wealth, you can give us a call. We can help you with 401k plans. We can help you with corporate benefits. We can help you retain and attract really great employees or just grow the family wealth. Carrie Stamp & Company, and thanks so much. I really love being part of Tech Hub.
Thank you, Carrie. And I think to that question, if anybody wants to grow their wealth, if your answer is no, I'm like, hello. I'm like, I need to call you, Carrie. Thank you again. And again, he does sponsor all of our tech talks, great members, super involved. So definitely reach out. He's got a great team as well. You guys really have some good people there, of course. And of course, our man of the evening, Lou. Actually, I want to see, Sam, did you want to say a couple words as well before we got started here? So he's, Sam's one of the special guests as well. And I don't know if you want to tell him a little bit about your co-chair responsibility.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Hi.
Okay.
So I'm Sam Edwards. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of SEO.co. It's a digital and content marketing agency. But in addition to that, for Tech Hub South Florida, I'm the Ecom and Marketing Peer Group Chair. My co-chair is Dove Quint of myphoto.com. Does anyone know Dove? One person? Two people? I know him too, so 4 people know Dove. All right, cool. But in our marketing group, essentially what we do is we focus on SEO, SEM, PPC, social, email, analytics. I myself have been in digital marketing for 10 plus years. I've written for Forbes and Inc. and Entrepreneur and all those major business and marketing publications. And so essentially what we look to do is bring together a group of marketers to essentially shoot the shit. I mean, we're less, I don't want to say less professional, but we're more casual when it comes to talking about marketing strategies, because sometimes marketing strategies so great, sometimes they completely fail, and it is what it is. So really what the peer group is about is getting all of us together to talk about what works and what doesn't, right? It's about finding out what's going to generate the most return on investment for every marketing dollar that's spent. Especially with those with smaller budgets, this is really a great place to be. And you know, who here is a business owner? Yeah, who here wears 10 hats at once? Yeah, so this is a great group for you because you have a lot of responsibilities and a lot of things that you need to do that really focusing on the marketing aspect can be tough. So having a group of experts who have already gone through this and know everything that you have questions for is really a great place to be. Even myself, having been in marketing for over 10 years, there's still some questions that I don't have the answer to that maybe one of you guys do because I'm just so close to what it is I'm doing. And so I would definitely advise, we're going to be looking to do a live event at some point. This is obviously the kickoff of live events, so we'll be doing that hopefully soon and planning it. But in the interim, if you're a member of Tech Hub South Florida, I would recommend that you join the e-commerce and marketing peer group that we're a part of. And then lastly, who hasn't been to VentureX before? Okay, so yeah, decent amount. So if you haven't been to this VentureX before, this one's dope. I've been here for over 2 years. I run a different marketing group called the Palm Beach Search Marketers from here. The last event we had here had about 150 people in. And then in addition to that, I also work from here too. VentureX is one of my clients and I've made a lot of clients through here. So if you need office space or are looking for office space, Jordan's definitely the girl to talk to about that and she can give you a tour. And that'll do it.
Awesome, thanks.
Fast talker.
All right, so thank you, Sam. And yes, like he was saying, anybody that is in the e-com marketing space that's interested, or anybody that if you have your own, own company and you've got a marketing department, you don't have to necessarily be a marketing company. That group is also for you. So if you've got a marketing person that might need some tips, or maybe they want to give tips and be a thought leader in the space, it's a perfect group for you guys. So now, man of the hour, I'm going to introduce Lou from Moving Minds. And if you want to go ahead and take it away.
Sure. Thank you, appreciate it. We're delighted to be here. I got a call from Nikki a couple of weeks ago and really honored and privileged to bring back live events for South Florida Tech Hub. So appreciate it. We're obviously in the golden age of marketing, and Sam, actually you can go home now. You know all of the information I'm about to present, so you're going to get nothing out of this actually. But how many of you know about account-based marketing? Have you ever heard of the concept of account-based marketing? How about social selling? Have you heard about social selling? I saw obviously a lot of hands. Each of you are, there's a lot of business owners here, right? So in terms of leveraging these tools, how many of you are sort of implementing things like this? How are you growing your company? Carrie, give me a sense of how you're growing, right?
Professional referrals,
Exactly.
Joining associations.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Michael, how are you growing your company? Right, so here you're using SEO and digital. So we're going to talk a little bit about B2B, right? So how many of you are in B2B versus B2C? Can I hear B2B? All right, so we're pretty good number of folks. So I think this will be relevant to you. So we're going to rifle through a lot of concepts, got a lot of slides to share with you and hopefully some knowledge. Now I have a little bit of calibration on how to present this. So hopefully for those of you like Sam who know all about the topic, you'll probably not be particularly educated about this, but all of those that don't know much about these topics, I hope you get a lot out of it. So let's get started. So B2B marketing and sales has changed so dramatically, even in the last 3 years. You know, the idea of picking up the phone and doing a cold call and really sending an email, and even marketing has changed, right? So those tactics are sort of old hat. Even on the marketing side, we have technologies and tools that are available to us now that didn't exist even a year and a half. And as Sam mentioned, our business as marketers is changing almost by the day with the influx of new tools, new channels. There's a lot of choices for business owners to make. And sometimes figuring out what those channels are, which ones are the right levers to pull, can be very daunting, actually. So we're going to go into some concepts here about how to target companies that you want to sell into, and the methods that a lot of software companies, sort of forward-thinking companies, are implementing today. So let's do that. Just first, let me give you the obligatory, what is moving minds. We actually moved here last fall, so this is our first live event as well, as a member, and we've gotten a lot out of it. In fact, the reason why we moved down in part was because of the folks at Palm Beach Tech Hub, and we felt like this was not only a great place to live, but a great place in terms of creative and technology talent, and as evidenced by the group that we've come to know and get to be a part of virtually. We were a virtual company in 2006 when we were founded, and part of the reason why we moved to Palm Beach is to build a physical plant, and we feel like we have the workforce here to be able to do that, so we're excited. So let's talk about what is account-based marketing. There's a lot of different definitions about what it is. There's a lot of ambiguity. So I'm hopeful that we'll sort of clarify what it is. So today, you've got a generally very hard time selling into companies, right? So you've got traditionally, and this existed before account-based marketing, but sales and marketing talking to each other, right? And I worked for 15 years in corporate marketing at some big Fortune 500 companies, and sales and marketing rarely talk to each other. They for whatever reason, politics, personalities, all of those things. But really, account-based marketing, it forces them to really bring together those two organizations and work collaboratively. Generally, you also see that companies always complain, salespeople always complain that the leads that marketing is driving are unqualified. So you make an outbound calls to people, they are not qualified, they don't have the right budget, they don't have the right timeline. And so that's the conflict that exists between a lot of marketing and sales. The other thing is that the ad networks that exist today began as consumer networks. So you have Facebook and Google, and they're really good at targeting consumers, but we weren't designed to target businesses. So that makes it really hard to focus and hone in on particular business decision makers. The other part is that traditional marketing really casts a wide net, right? So you're used to what we call building a funnel, and that's done through marketing and advertising to a large group of people. Generally, if you're selling software or technology or whatever it is to a organization, you've got probably 6 or 7 decision makers. They maybe make a decision based on collaboration and consensus building. Rarely are you having one person make one decision, and generally you need a champion with an organization. So what you see is a lot of ad spend, a lot of marketing spend that is frankly wasted marketing on different channels that are too broad of an audience. So ABM really changes that. It sort of flips the funnel. It allows you to start by targeting a specific organization rather than multiple organizations who may not qualify as a prospect. They may not have the revenue that you're looking for, the volume of employees, the initiatives, and so forth. So this really is a new concept that's been implemented primarily in software in California with a lot of forward-thinking companies that have implemented this. And they're seeing dramatic results. What you see here is that 97% of marketers are seeing a higher ROI with ABM tactics and strategies being implemented. And even now, 84% of marketers say that ABM is outperforming other methods of reaching prospects. So how do you measure account-based marketing? There are a number of different ways. So there's traditional, right? So you're looking at page views and impressions and site visits and all of those things. But there are other metrics now that allow us to really drill in on the individual and look at how we're affecting each decision maker. So let's take a use case. Who sells to big companies generally? Is there anybody that's in sales that sells, or even medium-sized companies? I saw you raise your hand in the back. Tell me a little bit about what company you're with and what industry vertical you're focused on.
The industry is automotive, luxury automotive. We count with,
So you're a salesperson for a dealer?
well, my business is selling advertising space
To who?
for
To Ferrari. Okay. So is there another business? Which business are you in? That doesn't really fit the criteria, but
I work for an operational IT company.
okay.
So we sell services around networking, security, collaboration.
So like a managed service, IT managed services. Okay, terrific. So we're like marketing managed services, ironically. So let me ask you, so are you in sales? Are you,
Yes.
okay. So how do you target which prospects you go after generally?
So primarily the size of the company and then by vertical.
Okay. And are you using like LinkedIn Sales Navigator to narrow your prospects and create lists and so forth?
Yep, that's what I leverage.
Got Are you doing any ABM?
Yeah,
Okay. So what type of tool are you using for ABM? Are you using like demand-based or Terminus, or you know which?
so we're not using anything at the moment, but
Okay.
as far as personally, that's what I focus on. Yep.
Right. So you find contact data and you outreach to those particular decision makers
Correct.
and begin sort of the sales cycle.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Got it. All right. That helps a lot. So ABM is essentially, in your case, we would target. So it's really up to you and the company, but you'd say, okay, we have a list of 200 companies we really want to influence and target. And then essentially what you do is you're targeting that company using a combination of sales outreach. Are you doing primarily cold outreach? Like, so you're outbound, they don't know who you are,
Yeah.
kind of coming out of the
Make
woods.
sure, yeah, make sure both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So really what ABM is doing is it allows marketing to sort of lay the groundwork for sales. So if you think about the invasion of Normandy, which ironically was celebrated, I don't know if celebrated is the right word, but obviously the anniversary was a couple of days ago. If you think about ABM is really laying the air cover for sales, right? No one is going to buy a product that you've never heard of, right? So you need marketing support to be able to be effective as a salesperson. So generally what ABM does is you lay down sort of the air cover, bomb the positions, and then you go in, the soldiers kind of storm the beaches, right? If you storm the beaches without the air cover, you're dead, right? So ABM is really working in complements to the sales organization and looking at their specific targets as companies fitting their criteria, and then drilling down on those particular companies with air support. So if you think about, let's just think about IBM. We want to sell to IBM in New York City, right? So traditionally, you're trying to find contact data. You want to talk to the head of IT security systems or what have you, right? You send an outbound email, you might make a phone call or an outbound cold call. So ABM allows you to basically run targeted advertising to an IP address. So if you want to target IBM's headquarters in the middle of New York, you can do that, right? If you want to target IBM's regional office in Tampa, you can do that. So you think about just the way that it changes how we advertise, and if you have a budget that's finite, which all clients do, and traditionally you geo-target that company. So let's say we want to target IBM in New York City, you're going to have to geo-target them. But geo-targeting in a large municipality is very expensive, and you're trying to reach 7 decision makers, and you might be spending, X amount of dollars reaching 3 million people who aren't relevant. So ABM really changes the game. It flips the funnel and allows you to really target very specifically companies that you value. So there's a process to ABM. Essentially, it's identifying those companies. Then you're developing messaging and positioning that's compelling. You're creating essentially the campaigns to be able to deploy. It's pretty straightforward, actually. And then you're running the digital campaigns. And then, of course, you're measuring the feedback and the input and the volume of traffic and ultimately your pipeline to determine if, in fact, you're generating qualified prospects and putting them into your funnel that is essentially flipped. So let's move to, we talked a little bit about warming up outreach, which is what we view ABM as, right? So you're laying down ABM for 30, 60, 90 days before you do outbound sales contact. so they know who you are when you make that call, right? So it improves your effectiveness as a salesperson. So, but the world of sales has changed dramatically. We talked about, cold calling and emailing that just don't work. So how do we, in the world of social media, contact decision makers more effectively using these particular channels? So the first is we start with contact data, and it sounds like you're using LinkedIn Sales Navigator to find prospects that fit your criteria. How else are you finding contact data? Because most of the contacts in LinkedIn are using personal email addresses, and sometimes they don't have cell phones. So do you append the data at all?
Zoom info.
Zoom info. Okay, Zoom info is kind of the high end of data, so that's pretty significant investment your company has made. So there are a lot of new companies. Used to actually, when you wanted a list, like right back when I was working in corporate, it was kind of like the shady drug deal. You'd go into the, to find a list of prospects, you were like hoping that the list was qualified. You weren't really sure. It's kind of a little shady, right? You didn't, and then ultimately you got a list that was really poor quality, bad contact data, and half of it was garbage, right? So, but we live in a world now where data is plentiful. You have the ability using Zoom Info or Seamless or Apollo. There's a variety of different vendors that you can obtain contact data. You can actually find out what types of technologies they're using, what their Twitter profiles are. There's a lot of particular data that you have access to that you never had really within the last 3 years. This whole business has blossomed. So for example, if I wanted to sell Moving Minds to Mark Zuckerberg or to Mark Benninghoff, which I would love to do, by the way, you can find out what their cell phone numbers are if you want to make an outbound call to them individually. So again, we have access to things that we never had before. So let's talk about the process of using that data and building sequences. So it's not about, sales is a process, right? So do you have a sequence, a cadence that you've developed that works for you guys?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's actually LinkedIn. That's the first one.
Right.
Following them, interacting with them, email, calling, follow up on the email.
Right.
And then just kind of circle back around the same process.
Right, yeah. So you're describing what we have here, right? So in the world of social selling, you're adding to the mix. Just like marketing is developing communications and advertising across different digital platforms like Instagram and TikTok, which didn't exist until recently. You've got a combination of things. So generally you start with account-based marketing to lay the air cover, to warm the prospects up, and then you do exactly what you're doing, right? It sounds like you're crushing your sales numbers right now.
We're getting.
All right,
Have
good.
higher goals.
That's good, good. So you combine that with a different set of activities, right? So the next step might be looking at their profile. You might be sending them an email. You might be following on Twitter. And ironically, a couple of days ago, I filled out a form previously, like 6 months ago, for a company. And I happened to go back to their pricing page to check out if they changed the pricing and so forth. And not 10 seconds after I dropped off of that page, I got a text message from the sales rep. And he said, hey, can I give you a call? We're end of quarter. We'd like to do, a lot of incentives to be able to close deals before the end of the quarter, which is the perfect time to buy software. So sure enough, I got on the call, and 2 days later, he had a sale. So we're talking about different technologies and processes that didn't exist before in terms of capabilities that empower salespeople to really get in touch with the decision makers. We don't have the secretary sitting in front of you and between you and the CEO anymore. You basically bypassing that. You can DM them on Twitter if you wanted to. So this is really what it looks like, right? So we're following this particular physician. We're communicating with him through LinkedIn messaging. We're warming him up by liking his posts and making comments and so forth. And again, that's sort of the concept of social selling. So what do you do with the data? And you're doing outbound sales prospecting. You've got ABM going on top of that. You've got another thing that is available to us as marketers, which is contact targeting. And that is taking the contact data of those that you're trying to do outreach to presumably you're already doing it. And you're loading those into LinkedIn. And Sam probably knows all about this. You're loading those contact lists into LinkedIn, into Twitter, and you're running marketing, not just to a group of people that fit your criteria, which generally the filtering is not great, but you're running it to the individual prospects that are your decision makers. So you're doing that in combination, what we call omnipresent marketing. So then you have the ability now with all kinds of tools to actually see those companies once you've targeted them on different channels. You're making outbound calls, you've got the ABM. You can actually see them as you visit a website. And that was the example that I just gave you where I visited, they could see Moving Minds, hit the pricing page. It spawned a notification to that particular salesperson who was assigned to us. He made an outbound text using a tool called Outreach, which is a sales enablement platform. And sure enough, 2 days later, he closed the deal. So again, unbelievable capabilities that we have today. This is retargeting. Have you heard of retargeting or remarketing? Generally, Carrie has. Anybody else? Hands up. Anybody heard of retargeting? Okay, I'll skip that.
All I got to say something.
Sure, that's right. Yeah. And we're recording that actually, by the way. So retargeting is essentially placing a cookie on a browser of a prospect who visits your website. And that cookie, which by the way is getting remediated next year. The privacy laws are changing, so that's temporary. But essentially it's placing a cookie, which then allows you to target that prospect as they browse the web, right? They go to a shoe store, they go to Nike, they go to Ticketmaster. You're basically running display ads to them. So the idea is using ABM, driving them to your website, tagging them with a cookie, and then of course using contact data to target them on LinkedIn. So you're really creating kind of the presence where you're everywhere, right? So you've got multi-channel marketing, you've got display network, which allows you to do the same thing with custom targeting. You've got Facebook, you're marketing to them on LinkedIn. So they can't escape you. I mean, they see you everywhere. And we're not talking about, this is just a digital presence, right? We're not talking about television and radio and those types of things. These are B2B decision makers. And so we have the ability now with a pretty, in terms of budgets, with a, LinkedIn is another story. That's a very expensive platform. But most of these things are available to you and are relatively inexpensive. So we've gone from these massive budgets and to still massive, but being able to target it more efficiently than ever before. So this is really what it looks like, right? So we're targeting this particular person. She can't escape us. And then of course, the sales journey, right? So how long is your sales cycle, curiously?
The customer size, probably between 2 months, I would say 2 3.
That's pretty quick. Yeah. So she's saying 2 to 3 months of the sales cycle, which is pretty quick. So because you're talking about either replacing an internal team or you're talking about replacing another vendor, presumably, right?
Not replacing, more of like an addition.
Augmenting what they're doing. Okay, so that's probably an easier sale and would reflect a shorter sales cycle.
Yeah, because it's harder to sell replacing, but rather
Absolutely.
adding on to the team.
Yeah, it's hard to change bank accounts, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard to displace an existing vendor. So that's smart, right? You're attaching your services to another. How are you actually getting in, once you're getting in touch with that prospect, are you kind of nurturing them aside from LinkedIn profile contacts and comments and things of that nature? Are you sending them case studies and webinars and other types of content?
Webinars, yeah, case studies, mostly webinars. We try to partner up with different manufacturers, learning, more of a resource type approach.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's all about education today, right? It's not even about selling. It's helping to educate people, much like we're doing today. Really, that's how selling works today, right? So it's not pummeling people on LinkedIn using messaging, although Michael did do that very effectively for me to join his alliance, his group, and that worked actually. But generally, you're basically, if you've got a sales cycle from anywhere to 2 to 12 months, that's a process of building awareness, consideration, and purchasing. And you're using essentially a variety of different content in different formats to be able to inform and educate that person and really providing value, really not selling. And that person eventually will come to their own decision as to whether your particular solution or capabilities is of interest to them. So that really covers it. We talked about ABM, we talked about social selling, talked about contact targeting, and a variety of other things. So it's great to be here. I appreciate it. And are there any questions? We've got a few minutes to take any questions you may have.
Research.
What type of business are you in? Curious. Software? What type of software? Sure, absolutely. So the question is essentially for a gentleman who is working or drives are you in sales or marketing or in operations? Client executive side, so sort of the sales side. And the question again is essentially how are you getting information related to that company's pain points in order to sell into them and be able to resonate with their needs, right? So what type of solution do you solve with your particular product? Okay, so they basically are in the IT space. They do digital transformation, which is a lot, right? And certainly that's a pain point that every CEO has. So there's a variety of ways to do that. There are tools, like I mentioned, that allow you to look and scrape contact data, but also technologies that they may be using, right? So it might be that there's a couple of solutions like Who Built This, which is a solution that allows you to scrape data and find out whether they're using maybe an antiquated platform like Joomla, versus WordPress or some other new CMS. So that's one way to do it. There are a variety of other ways to do it too. You could run A/B split tests in an ABM setting, right? So you could create multiple campaigns that are focused on different pain points that could potentially resonate with that particular prospect or that company. And certainly we're at a disadvantage now that live events don't exist anymore. So you can't meet people and find out what those problems are over a cocktail hour. But hopefully that problem is getting solved too. But how do you get that information curiously right now? Right, so they're using sort of former employees contacting using research and data. There's something called intent data, which is becoming pretty popular. I don't know necessarily that's particularly effective, but it's getting more mature as a business. So it's sort of an extension of data acquisition, which essentially the idea of intent data is that it aggregates essentially search patterns of an organization. Takes that information and sort of says, okay, there's a CMO at this particular company or an IT executive, and they are searching for an analytics platform. And we're able to essentially scrape that data based on, I actually don't know how they're gathering that data. I think there's some question as to whether the data is of a certain quality, but that is a new burgeoning industry. And that allows you to say, okay, Apple is looking for a digital platform in this particular that will solve this particular problem. So using intent data might be a solution to that. The other thing you may think about is using the contact data and running Twitter surveys, for example, to those contacts that are decision makers. So you can do a survey and ask them what their pain points are. You can also use third-party articles. What space are you in? You're just selling to any vertical, or are you? Right. So, okay. So you can look at different trade publications in that particular industry because they generally have a massive email list, and you can, as a third-party partner, so long as they've opted in to receive third-party information, you can run surveys outbound via those trade publications and gather that information. You might offer a white paper on digital transformation, collect contact data, and then you can run outbound campaigns to that particular person. So there are a variety of ways to do it, and there, it's not like the old days, right? Where you grab a focus group, have three, one in Chicago, one in San Francisco, you'd have 14 people, and you'd have an aggregate of 30 people give you input into your strategic direction of your company. You don't have to do that anymore, which was prohibitively expensive. So there are things today that technology-wise that we never had before. It's pretty exciting. Carrie?
Yeah, Lou, I just want to say that was a great talk, but I'm kind of crushed now because people like my posts on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever. They say nice things to me. They follow me. I thought they were just being nice, and they're just ABMing me.
That's right. That's right. So Carrie made a comment. He thought everybody genuinely liked his LinkedIn posts,
I like it.
which, yeah. So it's pretty much digital suck up is what it is, right? So they're nurturing you. I don't know what they're selling you because you're a man of wealth and beyond anyone's imagination. But although you're probably in the market for a boat or something fancy, right?
Bigger one.
That's right. Well, hopefully we'll all get bigger boats over the next couple of years. Michael?
You mentioned earlier about the privacy laws, that this cookie in the browser thing is going away soon. What's the replacement strategy? Or is it?
Well, it's still getting worked out. So, Apple and Facebook, they all, go ahead.
No, finish this.
You may know the answer better than I.
No, I know that the European Union already passed the law, so it's coming eventually.
Yeah, so the question is what is the world after post-cookie, essentially, right? So how are companies going to be able to get this information if they don't have the ability to lay a cookie, right? I can guarantee you there are engineers at Apple and Facebook that are figuring that out right now. We don't know what that's going to look like. I think it's still ambiguous. There's a lot of webinars actually right now, companies trying to figure out what that looks like. I'll guarantee you there'll be a better replacement for it because it's too important to completely get rid of. It's probably a temporary appeasement of European privacy laws, which are far ahead of us here in the US, which is kind of more of the Wild West than in Europe. So as a marketer, it's much harder in Europe to be able to use these types of tactics than it is here in the US.
So my question would be for startup companies starting the discovery phase, when they want to purchase data, where would they start looking first?
So you're with us. So the question is, where would you start first if you're a startup and you want to purchase contact data or use a vendor that would give you good contact data? Is that right for your sales process?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the company, if you don't mind.
So it would be a tech company, software, and they want to narrow down what would their client look like. Maybe, city, municipality, government, or would it be companies? So
Right.
I just want to see where would you purchase that?
Well, I'd probably start with LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Right? That's sort of the core tool for base level contact data. It's $59 or $79 a month. You buy that per license, per person. I'd start with that. That allows you to target individuals, industries, number of employees, and some other criteria. I would start with that, and then you need to append that data with other information because, as I mentioned, LinkedIn is incomplete. Like some people don't put their phone numbers in LinkedIn. Some people use their own personal email addresses. You don't have their cell phones. You don't have their work phones. You don't have their work emails. So you need to append that data. Now you're using something called Zoom Info. For a startup, Zoom Info is super, super expensive. It's $40,000 generally, $30,000 to $40,000 for an annual license each year, right? So most companies can't do that, but there are a lot of new entrants into the market. We actually use something called Seamless, which is seamless.io or AI. And that actually gives us our contact data. So that's what we use for our clients. And it's about $1,700 a year. There's other tools like Apollo, which is another vendor in the same space. They give you a sales enablement platform to run sequences, automate the sequences, but they also give you contact data. And that's, $129 a month. So there are some very inexpensive tools, but it's really what you do with the data. The fact that we have data is all great, but you need the techniques, you need the buyer's journey, you need to figure out what your cadences are, and even your scripts are really critically important, whether somebody opens your email, right? The subject line. So there's so many different things. I think sales is probably the hardest job of in any company, period. Everybody thinks marketing is easy, right? Sales is rough. And so I don't know that enough marketing people spend enough time with salespeople to really get an appreciation for that. But on the opposite side, marketing is always the last to be hired and the first to be fired. But now today, marketing is more complex than ever. It's more complex in some regards than supply chain and even operations. People, I don't think, appreciate that. But in the last 5 years, it has radically transformed. It's art and science today. So anyway, we're a pleasure to be with you. Michael, do you have a question? Are we running out of time?
No, we have 2 questions here, but you can
Okay.
go first.
Sure.
Yeah, so where do you come in? So what companies can you help out paying for that? How involved?
Well, our company works generally with venture-backed or private equity-backed startups. That's sort of the ideal client that's our ICP, right? So they may not have any revenue. So for example, we're building the marketing infrastructure for a company out of Boston, which is in the cardiac services space. So they're in healthcare, and we're building their CRM, their marketing automation, their outbound sales sequences, and all of those things. And we're doing all their creative and their branding and traditional marketing stuff, right? Campaigns and running television and radio and direct mail in certain markets for them. But generally, they have to have marketing budget. It's hard if you don't have marketing budget to do marketing. And some of this is pretty sophisticated, right? So there's sort of a minimum threshold to be able to do it well. But we also, work with companies like Citi and MasterCard and big companies. Those are generally project specific, like strategic initiative work. But most of the work we do is really replacing a marketing organization. We're an outsourced marketing team. Sort of much like IT is a managed service, marketing is now, we call it growth as a managed service. Couple of questions online.
Yeah, you can actually read down here.
All right. How would ABM help nonprofit organizations? We're not selling anything but trying to bring people through the door. Well, we haven't had much of people walking in the door recently, right? 15 days to bend the curve turned into 15 months. I think it's all great to be back together and meet people in person. Are you targeting individuals? Or are you targeting contributing organizations like nonprofit organizations? Or are you targeting companies who may be benefactors to your foundation, or for example? And we'll have to wait for that. Are we is Moving Minds looking to add new members to our company, like web and software engineers? Yes, of course. We're always looking for new talented people, much like Sam is as well. We're growing like crazy. That's one of the reasons why we moved here. And yes, if you'd like to reach me, you can call my cell phone, or you can shoot us an email or visit our website. And we'd love to take a look at your resume or your CV. So I will do my best to answer the question. Okay, targeting other nonprofits. So ABM allows you to do that, right? You're just really identifying the IP address of a company's network. Once you have that information, you're able to actually run ads to them. So if you want to target a nonprofit, it's the same as targeting a corporate entity as well, a for-profit. It's the same techniques, same combinations of things, right? So this is totally applicable to your particular circumstance. Any other questions online? Any other questions here in person?
Awesome.
I think maybe, how many people came for the presentation and me versus the in-person event and the cocktails? Oh, all of them, right? So it's great to be with you. I appreciate the invitation. Do we have any other questions? All right, so I think we're good, but thank you guys. Appreciate it.